she have been weaponized against us. Shalom. First and foremost, giving all praises, honor, glory, respect, and blessings to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham Racha Kwadash. Salutations to the Lord's elect on the four corners of the earth, pushing this truth and sincerity while patiently waiting for Yahweh Shai's return. And double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone, which have taught us everything we know through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai. Good morning and shalom to the Lord's elect, whosoever they may be out there. And I wanted to do a response video to a video that was done by the beloved brother Yashawamba from the Dallas camp. And the title that he named his video was called Black People Must Be Stopped. Now, I've watched this whole video already, and as you can see, I hit the replay button and I paused it 1 second going into the video. And one of our greatest enemies that have been towards our nation is the so-called black woman. Okay, now when you look up the word black means void of light, wicked, evil, dark. Now, when we say void of light, right, we mean what? Void of wisdom, because Yahweh Shai, who is the light spoken of in the book of John, the first chapter, is also known as wisdom. So if you don't have Yahweh Shai, if you don't have Yahweh Shai dwelling in you, if you don't have the wisdom of Yahweh, which is Yahweh Shai, who is also the light, if you don't have Yahweh Shai dwelling in you, then what are you? What's the opposite of light? Black, which is what? Darkness. And the darkness represents what? Sin and wickedness, which is what the vast majority of the women of our nation is heavy into. That's why in the scriptures it tells you that all wickedness is but little to the wickedness of a woman, because they love darkness rather than light. Why? Because their deeds are evil. So we come over here, right? We see weaponized. So what does it mean to weaponize something? And sure enough, leave it to Google to answer all your questions. So weaponize, right? From google.com.
Weaponize.
And check this out. It says adapt for use as a weapon. Adapt for use as a weapon. And then this is what really caught my attention right here. Exploit. So when you weaponize something, that person is used as a exploit for the purpose of attacking a person or group, or for spreading discord. And that's exactly what the so-called white man did to the women of our nation. The women of our nation has been exploited for the purpose of attacking our nation. Okay? And for spreading discord. Okay? Now, what I would like to do is look up the definition for discord, because the scriptures, when you read Proverbs chapter 6 verse 16, it says what? These 6 things doth the Lord hate, yea, even 7 are an abomination to him. And the first one you have is what? A proud look, a lying, and then the second one is what? A lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, feet that be swift in running to mischief, okay, a false witness, and amongst them is what? A person that soweth discord among brethren, right? So, what does discord mean? And this is what a discord is, okay? So, discord is what?
Discord.
And the definition that we have here is what? A disagreement between people, okay? Lack of harmony. And what is harmony? Well, harmony is when you have musical tones or musical tunes that come together to make a pleasant sound. That's harmony. You know, when tunes come together to make a pleasant sound. Okay? And it's interesting because they have a website called Discord. You know, show you that this is a wicked society because, you know, who creates a website called Discord? So lack of harmony between notes sounding together. And then right here, right? Because, you know, discord, which is a compound word, which a compound word is a word that can be broken down into multiple words in order to get a deeper understanding. So discord, right, as you see right here, you have dis. So the word dis, D-I-S, means not. And then cord, right? Cord means like cord, meaning agreement. Like you have the saying, somebody who's on one accord. Now the word AC and accord means together. And then you have cord, which means agreement. So you have AC, which means together. And then you have cord, which means agreement. So accord, so to be of one accord means to be of one agreement together. Okay? So when you have discord, you have somebody who is in a disagreement with you, like you see right here. Disagreement between people. And then down here, what do you see? You see disagree. Now, when you look at the so-called black woman, right? She is in a complete disagreement with how the Lord rules. You know, she's in complete disagreement against the Lord's laws, statutes, and commandments, and his knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And that's why in the book of Job, chapter 39, verse 17, it says what? Because the Lord had deprived her of wisdom, neither have he given to her understanding. You see, the so-called black woman does not have wisdom. She don't have Yahweh Shai dwelling in her. Wisdom was given to the Israelite man. You see? So when we go back here to weaponize, right? Adapt for use as a weapon. And that's the so-called black woman. And when I say the so-called black woman, I'm really talking about the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native Indian women, because they're all the same at the end of the day. The Latino woman is the same as the black woman. The so-called North American Indian woman is the same as the black woman. Okay? They all like shaking their ass. They all like showing their titties on live TV with their cleavage showing, wearing a tight-ass shirt with their heads uncovered, got a bad attitude, don't know how to behave themselves in public. They act like they shit don't stink until they get a closer look at their own doo-doo in a fucking toilet. You know, they coochie stink. You know, they think they all that when they're not. There's clearly women of the other nations that are far that have, you know, that look good, that actually look good, you know, that you could deal with, you know. But the point here is exploit. You see, the so-called black woman was exploited for the purpose of attacking our nation. And in what ways do the so-called black, Latino, and Native Indian women attack our nation? Well, by kicking us out the house, right? Because what does the scripture say in the book of Amos, the third chapter? Can two walk together except they be agreed? You see, the so-called white man gave the so-called black, Latino, and Native Indian women authority and power over the Israelite man, which means that she can pretty much start an argument with him. You know, if something happens in the household that she disagrees with, she can break up with her man, put him on child support, and then get the baby aborted. You see that? And you see that happening amongst the women of our nation. They go to these abortion clinics, and what? They'll go and get their Israelite babies aborted. And believe it or not, that is a major attack on our nation. And a matter of fact, that is one of the biggest attacks on our nation that has led to genocide, which the so-called white man has legalized here in America. Okay? One of the greatest genocides that ever happened here in America was the so-called black, Latino, and Native Indian woman going to the abortion clinic to have our babies aborted. That is a direct attack on our nation. You know, the so-called black woman coming up against her man, attacking him, spitting in his face, setting him up to get jumped, killed, robbed. And then on top of that, to make matters worse, you know, you have this. A so-called black woman who has been set up to be a preacher in these different churches to our people. And you got these men who's been beaten down so bad to the point that they're willing to accept a woman preacher. You know, clapping and cheering her on, and you know, because our people are far gone. So the so-called black woman has been weaponized on all levels for the purpose of what? Destroying our nation. And it all starts with the man, because the so-called white man knows that if he can use the woman to attack the man by effeminizing him, making him like her, then basically he has no threat. You see, the number one threat to the so-called white man on this planet is the Israelite man standing in great boldness against them who have afflicted them. You know, not being effeminized, not walking in the spirit of Yahweh Shai. By what? By keeping the laws, statutes, and commandments that they can keep to the best of their ability, and by walking in the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of the Holy Scriptures, to be upright, to be upright to the best of their ability. This is what the so-called white man fears. He don't fear some Israelite man that has been attacked by a weaponized so-called black woman. So what I would like to do is go to the book of Genesis, the 3rd chapter, because the weaponization of our women really started with Eve in the Garden of Eden. This is where the weaponization of our woman began. Genesis, and I'm gonna just click on this because I'm pretty much gonna read more than just one verse. So this is the book of Genesis, chapter 3, verse 1. Now the serpent, now the serpent, you know, actually, you know what? I want to read this in the Blue Letter Bible. Salakia for that. I meant to go to the Blue Letter Bible for this. So let's go here. That dude looks like Vocab Malone, don't he? Got the beard and everything. He's wearing that hat. You know, he's got the face of a mouse and the nose like one too. Let me see. Let's go to Genesis chapter 3, verse 1. Okay, so this is the book of Genesis, chapter 3, verse 1, right? It says, now the serpent, right? Now when you look up this word serpent, I believe it goes back to the Hebrew word nakash, which means a sorcerer. Because, you know, lying to people, deceiving people is what? That's a form of witchcraft and sorcery. So we got nakash there. See? Nakash. And what do we have down here? Okay, it says serpent, snake, image, fleeing serpent, mythological. Okay. Let's see. Okay, let me see. So let's come up here, right? Let's go to the root word. Okay, and what do we see right here? The root word, which is nakash, right? This is the root word for it. And what does it say right here? To practice divination. Divine, observed signs, learned by experience, right? And why do you think the scriptures describe this man? Because this man, he was so crafty and subtle. This man was described as a serpent. You know, he was very crafty, sneaky, subtle. Why? He learned all that by experience, and it was in his spirit to learn these things. You see, diligently observe, practice fortune telling. And fortune telling is what? That's a form of sorcery. Take as an omen, okay, to practice divination. And when you practice divination, what are you doing? That's sorcery. Okay? And down here, what do we have? Whisperer, a magic spell. Okay? And spells, what is a spell? A spell is a enchantment that puts a person in a particular mind state. Okay, right here, enchant, right? As a matter of fact, the word chant means what? It means to say or to call out. So so enchant means to call out in order to put a spell on somebody. You know, like you can really put a spell on somebody using words. That shit is real, man. So this serpent was doing this shit back in the. So this man, you know, this man was a sorcerer. Okay, he was a straight up witch. Now the serpent, which was an actual man who was very shrewd in the knowledge of wickedness, right? Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. Now the beast is talking about the people of the other nations, okay? It was talking about the sons and men back then. You see? So this man was more subtle than the other people of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, have the Elohim said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. Now the fruit here is talking about the knowledge. Okay? The knowledge that Adam and Eve was not supposed to learn of. And this was the knowledge of what? The knowledge of evil, the knowledge of wickedness, which was what? The trees represent the other nations back then. Okay? That's what the trees is talking about. So, in other words, the Lord commanded Adam and Eve not to learn of the knowledge of the other nations. Why? Because it was the knowledge of corruptness. It was the knowledge of wickedness. And these other nations, they was learning of that knowledge. Okay? They was, because even back then during the time of Adam and Eve, idol worship was going on. The heathens were doing it. How else did they know to build up idols and all this other shit? They learned that from the knowledge of corruptness, the knowledge of evil. Okay, idol worship goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden. So the fruit represents the forbidden knowledge, the knowledge that Adam and Eve was supposed to stay away from, and the trees represent the people of the other nations. Okay. So, and eat is a metaphor for what? Learning. So, and the woman, okay, Eve, so-called black woman back then, said unto the serpent, which this serpent this serpent right here came from the line of the wicked. Okay, this was a wicked individual right here. The fact that he lied and deceived Eve proved that he was wicked. Okay. But this person right here, he was of the son of the wicked, the son of that wicked one. You see. And guess what? Even he back then had brown skin and woolly hair, because during the time of Adam and Eve, everybody had brown skin and woolly hair. Adam and Eve were so-called black people. Okay, they had brown skin and woolly hair. And this serpent back then, which was the so-called white man back then, but back then, because back then the so-called white man actually had brown skin and woolly hair, but the Heavenly Father took his brown skin and woolly hair from him as a curse and a punishment. Okay. So, and the woman said unto the serpent, the crafty and subtle man, we may learn of the knowledge, we may learn of the fruit of the trees of the garden, right? But of the fruit of the tree, now right here in Genesis 3 verse 3, right? Because Salakia, I just wanted to use fruit and trees up here to let you know that the fruit is talking about knowledge, the tree is talking about the other nations. But in Genesis 3 verse 2, right, the trees here is not talking about the people of the other nations. Okay. The knowledge right here in Genesis 3 verse 2 is talking about the knowledge of righteousness. So the woman said unto the serpent, right, we may eat of the fruit of the trees, meaning we may learn of the knowledge of righteousness in the midst of the garden, right? The knowledge of righteousness in the midst of the garden. But right here in Genesis chapter 3 verse 3, right? But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, okay, God have said, ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. You see? So this tree right here in the midst of the garden in Genesis 3 verse 3 is talking about the people of the other nations. And this fruit right here in Genesis 3 verse 3 is talking about the forbidden knowledge that Adam and Eve was not supposed to learn of. But in Genesis 3 verse 2, right? Genesis 3 verse 2, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, right? But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, the Elohim, the angels said, ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. Right? So in Genesis 3 verse 3, right, Eve was completely aware that she was not supposed to learn of the knowledge of wickedness and corruption, right? But let's see what this crafty and subtle man says to her. And the serpent said unto the woman, ye shall not surely die. And he clearly lied to her, right? That's why his ass, bro. That's why when the sons of the wicked came back through the line of Esau, they came back with no melanin in their skin. And they came back with stringy hair. Genesis 3 verse 5. For Yahweh doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, ye learn thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil, which he was right about that, but he lied to her when he said, ye shall not surely die. Right? So in other words, this damn serpent, this sorcerer, right? He used words in order to get her to sin. So check this out, right? Genesis chapter 3, verse 6. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, right? When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, right? This is the beginning of Eve becoming weaponized right here. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, right? She saw that the knowledge was good for learning. The knowledge of corruption and wickedness was good for learning, right? And that it was pleasant to the eyes. Now let's look up this word pleasant. She saw that it was pleasant, which you'll find out that that word pleasant really means covetous. She coveted to learn of the knowledge of wickedness, which is why the scriptures say what it says. All wickedness is but little to the wickedness of a woman. Look at that. And the Hebrew word here for pleasant is the awa. Okay, the awa. Or is that that's the awa, I believe. You see? And right here we have what? We have desire, wish, longings of one's heart. And when you long for something, it's going to constantly be on your mind until you finally do it. Appetite, you see that? Covetousness, bad sense, you see that? She had a strong covetousness to learn of the knowledge of evil. She had a covetousness to learn of the knowledge of corruption. Thing desired, object desired, right? And down here, what do you see? You see greed. You see lust. And this was the beginning of Eve, the so-called black woman, being weaponized. Because the moment she started diving into the knowledge of corruption, what happened? She started learning that she could have authority and power over the man. She started learning that she don't have to be in subjection under her man. She started learning that she can do all these various things if she was under a different type of rulership. So in learning of the knowledge of corruption, she completely corrupted her way, right? Now, I'm not saying that, she had authority over Adam, But she knew that later on down the line that you know, if there was an event where the wicked would have control over the world, that she would have authority over the man. So she had a lust, she had a greed for this type of power and authority, right? Let's go back to the root word. You know, she learned, because see, one thing about women, women don't like to be disciplined. You know, and in that verse, it seemed like Eve was looking for a scapegoat to be able to do whatever she wanted to do, which also leads me to believe that she also saw that knowledge as something to, that wicked knowledge as something to dive into, because then she could do whatever she want later on down the line, right? And right here we have what? We have desire, incline, covet. You see that? Covet. Wait longingly, wish. You know, she was wishing she could dive into this knowledge of corruption, right? Be greedy, desire, crave. When you crave something, it's just constantly on your mind until you finally eat it. To desire, long for, lust after. This is what was going through Eve's mind when the scriptures say that it was pleasant to her eyes, meaning it was pleasant to her mind. You see that? So this was the beginning of our women being weaponized. Right here, Genesis 3 and 6. And when Eve, the woman, right, when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, when she saw that the knowledge was good for food, good for learning, and that it was pleasant, right, pleasant to the eyes, meaning what? She coveted in her mind to learn of this knowledge of wickedness, and a tree to be desired to make one wise. She took of the fruit thereof and did eat. So in other words, she dived into this knowledge of wickedness, and then she brought her husband along, right? And gave also to her husband, and with her, and gave also to her husband with her, and he did eat. So her husband ended up learning the knowledge of her husband ended up learning the knowledge of corruption. Okay? And guess what? The eyes of the both of them were opened. Why? Because they were aware of the knowledge of wickedness and the knowledge of righteousness. Okay? And this is where they started to learn balance, right? Because in Proverbs the 11th chapter, it says what? A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. You know? So, you know. You know, their eyes were open because they were aware of wickedness. You know, they were aware of wickedness. So it says, in the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew they were naked. Now, does it mean that they were naked? No. Naked represents what? They knew they had sinned. They knew they were wicked. Okay? So here it is, you know, they dived into this knowledge of corruption, and their eyes were opened, and they knew they had committed wickedness, right? They knew they had sinned, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. You see? Now, Something else I wanted to, because I found this to be very interesting, right? When I looked up the word naked, check this out. Now, of course, the devil, they're gonna put nakedness in here. But then, when you go back to the root word for naked, right? I found this to be very interesting. Okay. See, they knew they were naked. See. And what do you know? Look, subtle, right? It says be shrewd, crafty, beware. You see that? They were aware that they had sinned, right? Take crafty counsel, be prudent, which prudent has nothing to do with that. You see, subtle, shrewd, right? Now, I looked up the word shrewd earlier, which let's go to that right now. Okay. Let's look it up again anyway. Shrewd. You see, because how else did they know to try to cover their tracks of being wicked? Hey, man. Adam and Eve were wicked, bro. They knew they fucked up. So, okay, so shrewd, right? Having or showing sharp powers of judgment, right? Because in order to know proper judgment, you have to know good and evil, right? So they were shrewd. Their eyes were open to good and evil. Their eyes became open to evil when they learned of the knowledge of wickedness, right? Astute. And then down here we have what? We have shrewd. Okay, that has nothing to do with what I'm looking for. Okay, down here we have what? Clever. See? They were clever, cunning, wise. You see? They were wise because they knew both good and evil. Sus. They were sus. Look that word up. Wily, sages, canny. Okay, so let's go back. So, they knew they were naked in the sense that they knew they had sinned, but they knew they were naked in the sense that, they were shrewd, because they were aware of evil now at this point. And they heard the voice of the Lord, Yahweh, the power, walking in the garden of the cool of the day, and Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord among the trees of the garden, meaning they hid themselves amongst the other nations. Because, the other nations were pretty much diving in wickedness as well, So they tried to blend in with the other nations. Even though in the long run, the Lord still found out where they were. But I wanted to do a lesson on how the woman has been weaponized against us on all levels. And what you see amongst the so-called black woman today, the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native Indian women, is the result of them being weaponized, going all the way back to the Garden of Eden. And the so-called white man, who was that serpent in the garden back then, his black ass deceived Eve, and she dived into that knowledge of wickedness, right? And lo and behold, she got what she wanted. She has authority over the man. She can now preach to a congregation. She can get abortions. She can be wanton. But there's a price to pay for taking on and living that knowledge of wickedness, Eve. There's a price to pay. And the Lord's going to require that with blood. You understand? You're going to pay, Eve. You're going to pay for being disobedient unto your man in the Garden of Eden. You're going to pay, Eve, because the serpent is going to do what he always do. He's going to bite you in the back. He's going to turn his back on you. He's going to take away all your government benefits, and he's going to leave you destitute. And then what? You're going to be out there bald-headed, mad, stinking, ashamed, protesting. And protesting ain't going to do shit, okay? Because the so-called white man, he's going to be sitting in his office, drinking coffee, laughing at you while you're out there complaining that you can't feed your children and that you can't even take care of yourself. And that time is fast approaching, Eve. You're going to wish you never turned your back on us. And Heavenly Father's got your number with a specific death angel hovering right above your head. And when you least expect it, you're going to pay for diving into that knowledge of wickedness. And for siding with the serpent, Esau, Edom, the so-called white man. With that, I'm going to say shalom. It's on to the next one.